Dying to be Stuckmocky, Chapter 5. Vira intervenes. Vira wanted to reach out and take Fahyrjeon's furry paw. Hand? But she didn't know how the gesture would be received. While she was persuading herself to take the risk anyway, the acolyte glided piously into the room, carrying a broad, flat metal bowl and an alarmingly large knife. Vira immediately forgot her intended act of consolation and watched as the acolyte proceeded to an enormous stone altar before the golden Luuparsoss. He laid the bowl down with a ceremonial bow, then turned to the nearby Mirrin and cleared his throat tentatively. Moments before, Mirrin had beseeched himself to a halt, so he rose from his knees to face the acolyte, who held the gleaming blade. "Sir," the acolyte whispered loudly, "would you care to proceed? The circumstances are a little unusual," as he glanced nervously at the Stuckmocky, "but I'm sure between the three of us we can subdue it sufficiently." Mirrin barely turned his head in Vira's direction, just enough to see her console was held in only one hand, limply by her side. Without any warning, he grabbed the knife from the startled acolyte's hand and lunged at Fahyrjeon, while Vira instinctively stepped forward to intercept him. "Ow!" she screamed as the knife sliced through her flimsy costume bracer. She collapsed to her knees, clutching her bleeding forearm, as the console skidded across the floor to Fahyrjeon, who scooped it up. While Mirrin was momentarily distracted by the wound he'd so ignobly inflicted on a female, Fahyrjeon rapidly pressed buttons on the console. Immediately the Stuckmocky began vigorously jumping up and down on the spot, much to the consternation of the severely confused acolyte, whose gaze was transfixed by the spectacle. At that moment, the red-robed priest appeared in the chamber doorway and froze at the sight of a bouncing Stuckmocky, a head-bobbing acolyte, a contrite gladiator, and a bloody young man in flimsy armour, whimpering on the floor like a girl. "Pateron," he lectured the acolyte, "this is not how the ceremony is supposed to proceed." "What ceremony?" winced Vira through gritted teeth. With a floor-shaking thud, the Stuckmocky stopped bouncing and breathed heavily from exertion. "He means the sacrificial ceremony, Vira." Vira ignored the noxious billow of Stuckmocky breath that enveloped her as she reached up with her good arm and took back the console from the panting Fahyrjeon. "Sacrifice? What? No sacrifices!" she commanded, as she twisted around looking for the unfortunate lamb or calf. The priest stepped forward to help Vira to her feet. "It would be appreciated," he continued to lecture, "if in future you would bring your Stuckmocky to the temple already trussed, in order to avoid just such an undignified incident as this." He eyed the bleeding wound on Vira's arm. "We want to be sure to sacrifice the right creature, after all," he said with forced humour. Vira's befuddled brain had finally made sense of the last minute or so, and her interest in her wound suddenly receded. "No, no, no!" she declared, as she backed protectively towards Fahyrjeon. "This Stuckmocky is my responsibility, and I didn't bring it here to become the next poxy piece of apparel for Luuparsoss." Suddenly a large furry arm wrapped around her and held her tight to a large furry body behind her. The three men froze in alarm. "Bind them with your magic," rumbled a deep voice in her ear. Vira looked down at her console and, with a view largely obscured by fur, managed to comply. "Okay, now what?" she asked in a shaky voice. The Stuckmocky released its grip enough to turn Vira to face it, as it brought its furry face down level with hers. She looked into its eyes and saw they were shining with what she would assume were tears if she were looking into the eyes of a human. "You have the Wershoft of Fahyrjeon and all its clan," it told her in a grave tone. "I'm sorry," Vira said tremulously. Suddenly her face was pressed forcefully into warm, matted fur, while she struggled to breathe and wondered longingly if she would ever see the safety of her bedroom again. Just as she was becoming light-headed from lack of oxygen, Fahyrjeon released its grip, wrapped its fingers and thumbs around her armpits, definitely hands then, not paws, and lifted her up level with its face. Wearshoft means you are an honorary member of my clan, and are therefore Stuckmocky. It placed her back on the floor, and wiped its eyes with a furry hand. We will have to have the initiation ceremony later, but it is very nice, it rumbled. Lots of cupcakes and community juggling. I'm Stuckmocky? Vira asked, picturing herself juggling covered in a thick layer of matted fur. When did this happen? When you took Mirren's blade for me, and again when you denied them my sacrifice. Fahyrjeon's gaze fell on Vira's bloody forearm. But we must attend to your wound immediately. It tenderly took Vira's wrist and elbow in either hand, bent low over the bleeding wound, and spat copious amounts of foul greenish saliva all over it. Oh, Vira politely grimaced. Thanks so much. It will heal in no time now, Fahyrjeon smugly assured her. If I don't die of blood poisoning first, she muttered. Fahyrjeon planted a huge hand on Vira's head and vigorously mussed her hair, while producing a strange rhythmic gurgling noise, which Vira took for a Stuckmocky chuckle. That, or Fahyrjeon was working itself up for another session of profuse spitting. Well, shall we be going now? It asked. Going? Going where? Home. To our clan, of course. We must participate in the Wearshoft ceremony, and have you fitted for your juggling costume. Fahyrjeon released a small gurgle. As much as I'm looking forward to whatever that may look like, we have the small matter of Mirrin. We can't just leave him here with his reputation in tatters. It's all my fault. Fahyrjeon glanced over at the frozen gladiator. Oh, I think we could do that, couldn't we? Fahyrjeon looked back at Vira. He will get over it, with the very next Stuckmocky he slaughters. But he won't get the chance to slaughter another Stuckmocky with his reputation the way it is now. Oh! Vira's eyes grew wide with alarm. I didn't mean that the way it sounded. I meant I have to find a solution to the situation without any more Stuckmocky dying. But you don't have to stick around. Go home and be with your clan. I'll be fine. Fahyrjeon took Vira by the shoulders and looked deeply into her eyes. You do not understand, Vira Henker Fibonacci. Wearshoft means we are bound, you and I. I cannot go home until you come with me. Vira looked back into the deeply expressive eyes that were still shining with some mysterious Stuckmocky emotion. Then Mirren will have to come with us.